Hey everyone, you got me in mid-conversation as I was telling Ellie, Epstein didn't kill himself. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but folks, a lot of news came out this weekend.
Oh,
We're dealing with World War III. And I was telling Ellie that, the interest in the Epstein files kind of waxes and wanes. And right
mhm.
now, someone showed a chart that said, like, all of a sudden searches have gone down. And I was telling Ellie, don't worry, they'll go back up. It's just that, we might be dealing with World War III right now. So people are a bit preoccupied as Donald Trump tries to wag the dog. But no matter how hard he tries, he cannot escape the Epstein files.
No.
We're going to get into it. This is with Ellie Leonard, Panic Writer. Please subscribe. Zev is going to join us a bit short and really soon. And once he does, I'll bring him back on. Well, let's start with before we get to did Epstein kill himself, let's start with the Post and Courier, Ellie, and they seems to have hey Zeb, perfect
There's
timing.
Hey, I'm sorry I'm a
hello.
little late.
No,
No,
How are you
perfect
guys?
timing,
good.
perfect timing. I said before we get into the conspiracy theories, which I don't think they're really conspiracy theories, we'll talk about these FBI 302s, where inmates overheard prison guards essentially talking about a cover up and the murder of Epstein. Let's talk about the Post and Courier, Ellie, and how they seem to be corroborating this bombshell story that clearly the DOJ tried to hide, in which a 13-year-old girl in the 80s accused Donald Trump of assaulting her. And furthermore, this same girl, folks, got a settlement with the Epstein estate in 2021. A settlement is not an admission of guilt, but nonetheless, it's important to point out. And furthermore, there were at least that we know 4 interviews that the DOJ did with this, the FBI did with this woman. And they created a 21-page slideshow. And just so happens that of the 4 interview summaries, 3 of them, Ellie and Zeb, were just missing.
Yeah.
And can you tell us what the Post and Courier kind of corroborated over the weekend, Ellie?
Well, it was really interesting because a lot of us were like trying to figure out what this island was behind the redactions. And then we had all kind of figured out Hilton Head. And then that had led to finding these old articles because there was actually an article from January that talked about this case. And then somebody, once we knew it was Hilton Head, somebody sent me that article. And then there was the subsequent article that came out this week from the Post and Courier. But it's a story about a woman who lived on Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. And she lived in kind of this little resort complex. And her mother was one of the real estate, one of the people who did managed rentals. And so she was potentially renting to this guy named Jeff, who had put out an ad for a babysitter. And her mom said, "Why don't you go try to babysit?" And she showed up, and he obviously didn't have kids, and it was Jeffrey Epstein. And I think what's really the things that have caught me about this story
Do
is
we
that
know it's
you
Jeffrey Epstein? Do we know it's Jeffrey Epstein, or it's a
I
guy
think
named Jeff?
she later
Identifies
said
him as. Yeah.
identifies him. She said he looked like Lurch from the Addams Family, which I thought was pretty funny because I can see that. But I think some of the interesting details that came out of this case, she is just that idea of him being missing. I think from it's like 1981 to 1987, he's just sort of off the map, and we don't have a lot of information. And that would have been during that time because this would have taken place in 1984. But she also goes through like a lot of really specific details about this other guy named Jim Atkins that the subsequent article said he was a benefactor for a for-profit college. He was on the board outside of Cincinnati. They didn't name the college, but they said they had tracked him down. And that there are just a lot of really specific details about her being triggered by cologne later on. And then she realized that was the same cologne. She talks about his cardboard shirt, which was a type of fabric. It was Tyvek. It was like an 80s fabric that was really crinkly, and people called it cardboard shirts. She had like really, really specific details that stood out to me. And then just the idea that we had one interview with her, 1302, which is an FBI interview, which means that they took her story seriously. Then we got 3 more that were missing, but we are still missing 37 pages. And so potentially there is a 5th interview that we don't have yet. So, yeah, that's what we have so far, but it's like brand new information about location and activities and time periods. And yeah.
Yeah, more and more corroborations, folks. And again, these are still allegations, but these allegations were damning enough that the DOJ decided to scrub it. And then they said, there's still their excuse of, I don't understand. And we still don't have the originals, right? These are all duplicates.
Mhm.
As far as I understand, they're duplicates. The originals are in the were originally in the Ghislaine Maxwell deposition, right? So in the evidence for that, I'm not doing the same process that Ellie's doing. So it's kind of interesting for me to hear what she's going through, because I'm not looking for the documents per se. I'm looking at the fact patterns, and it's very different than what she's doing. And I love that, because we're both arriving at slightly different conclusions, maybe. Because I don't, I think there's two things that are true here. One is, clearly there's a cover up. Clearly the DOJ has been covering up for the president of the United States. That is a scandal of huge, mammoth, biggest proportions in the entire universe. We can't have that. We can't have a president of the United States facing allegations, multiple allegations of raping young girls, and then still being a sitting president as the DOJ covers up for him. I mean, it's just unacceptable. It's untenable for any regime. It's just not acceptable. That, I think, is the most important thing to take away from the story. The second thing is, I have questions about this particular case, because there's just questions about it. I mean, it happened in 1984. She remembers this guy named Jeff, doesn't remember him as Jeff Epstein. Her mother is a bit dodgy anyhow. She's got a previous criminal conviction. She's alleging that he was trying to blackmail her. It doesn't really make sense the way she's describing her blackmailing and then embezzling lots of funds from a real estate agency that she worked for or either owned. I couldn't tell. And the rest of the details are also a little weird, because we don't know that we suspect that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump only knew each other from the late 80s. Her timeline doesn't really match, because she would have been 13, 14, maybe 15 years old in the early part of the 80s. There's one crossover year, possible that Jeff and Donald Trump knew each other back then, but I just don't see the facts lining up. And then who's the guy that there was a concert by?
Oh, yeah. Rick James.
Rick James, yeah. So Rick James apparently had a big drug problem in the 1980s. And in 1984, when she says she went to see a concert, he didn't perform, as far as I could tell, from all the concert records in Savannah. So, these things just don't add up. And it could be that she's just misremembering years. That's
Right.
very, very likely. It happens with trauma. It happens in these cases. I mean, this is a long time ago. Remembering the exact year, the exact sequence of events, who knows? But I don't, I think it's tricky, because we all want to find this evidence saying Donald Trump did terrible things to young girls. But this may not be it, or it may be it. It definitely needs more investigation.
Right.
The FBI did the right things by investigating it. And what's wrong is that the DOJ has been covering it up. I mean, this is
what I
mammoth.
understand. Zev and Ellie, I don't understand that. If indeed, like, what they should have just said was, oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of these. We investigated it, and you know what? We didn't find anything there. So here it is. But the fact that they scrubbed it, and could they have made it even worse for Donald Trump? The fact that they scrubbed it, they lied about it, and now you have Pam Bondi with the House. Republicans are voted with the Democrats to subpoena her, and the day after they decided to subpoena her, then the DOJ all of a sudden finds these 3 interview summaries and then publishes it. Like, that to me is just weird. Like, it's
Pretty
like
damning.
exactly, someone said, Rice said the Streisand effect. We want to hide something. We want to hide something. We want to hide something. Oh crap! Now we're just gonna put like the world's notice on there. And even if this turns out to be bunk, we don't know, folks. Now we know the allegation. The allegation is done in such graphic detail that it makes Donald Trump look bad. And going back to Zev's point, Ellie, it looks like a cover up.
Right. And I there are things that really stick out to me, like when she comes in and she starts to talk, she is totally transparent about her criminal history and her mother's criminal history. She's like, look, this is what happened. This is what it looked like. I don't want you to hold that against me and me telling you this story. But also, like, something that I found, and I don't know if it's connected in any way, is during the period of time when he would have lived in this complex, there was a huge fraud scandal that occurred in the complex that he lived in, that kind of had some of the MOs of some of the things that he was involved with, but it got away with later, with like Hoffenberg and things like that. But it doesn't have his name on it, so I can't guarantee that that is something that he was involved with. But it felt very similar. But also, I found out that the woman was repped by Eric Fudali, who is from the Bloom Group, and the Bloom Group is the one who represented Katie Johnson. So there was like a little bit of a connection there. There was a little bit there was just little specific tiny details that occurred in here that, yes, I was saying this earlier, like this idea of like getting my head stuck on the MOs of what Epstein would do, when most of what we know about him, he's in his mid 50s. He's like an older sex offender. He's nearly a billionaire by that point. But this would have been when he was very young, when he was up and coming, when he was traveling back and forth to like Saudi Arabia and Europe and doing all these things that we don't know what he was doing during a certain period of time, when he didn't have a house yet in Florida. And we don't really know if he would have been at a concert. We don't really know if he would have had a drink back then, right? We know him as a teetotaler later, but like we don't know if things would have been different when he was younger. And so there's things that I go, okay, I know this is not necessarily his MO, but we're also dealing with like 20 years earlier than what we consider Epstein to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all those things are very important points, and you're right. He wasn't a drinker, and I think in this case, he supposedly puts out an ad for babysitting. This girl, at the time she's a girl, applies for this position, goes and babysits. There's no baby, there's no kids.
Right.
He gives her alcohol, he gives her drugs, and then has sex with her. That is not his MO, though. That is sort of like it's similar, but it's not his MO. He doesn't do that.
And he doesn't pay her yet. He doesn't
Yeah.
pay her like he would have later. But again,
And then he blackmails her family, which, I mean, blackmail is consistent, but is blackmailing a family versus blackmailing a politician and whatever is a slightly different sort of kettle of fish. Look, I think that this is very important that the FBI did 5 or at least 5, maybe 4 or 5 interviews with her, because they did take it seriously, and they should have taken it seriously, and they should have investigated it, and absolutely it should not have been buried and hidden from the public in the Epstein files. But the thing that I keep coming back to is you don't hide something unless you're guilty of something. There's no reason to hide anything, Donald Trump. There's no reason to hide anything, DOJ, if you didn't do anything wrong. But if you did something wrong, well, then you're going to go on this massive exercise to delete all the Trump references in the Epstein files. And then you're going to look like an idiot when you get caught, because you get caught in a cover-up, which, the old adage, the cover-up always gets you. This is the cover-up that's going to get him, because you can't do that. That's specifically against the law that the Congress enacted for the Epstein Transparency Act.
It's and folks, I want to ask you this question before we talk about the latest juicy. I hate to use the word juicy, but it is juicy information that we got about what we all kind of have suspected, that Epstein didn't kill himself. A lot of these people just keep suiciding themselves. Have you noticed that? Ellie and Zev, they just, Jean-Luc Brunel just keep suiciding himself. They just keep disappearing. It's very interesting.
Prime Minister of Norway that was arrested recently, he had a suicide attempt just a couple of weeks ago, which is, questionable after he got arrested.
Yeah. And then also the fact that there's investigations everywhere except the United States of America. Very interesting. Very interesting, as Gavin Newsom said. But I wanted to ask this question about Pam Bondi, because Pam Bondi, like we said, folks, the House has subpoenaed her. She has to appear. Last time didn't go so well. And a day after the subpoena happened, that's when we found these 3 missing executive summaries that somehow, weirdly, oddly, were scrubbed, which I agree with you, Zev, is a cover-up. Also, Ro Khanna used the word cover-up. Hillary Clinton, I used the word cover-up. I've heard Pramila Jayapal use the word cover-up. Ellie, what do you expect, or if you could ask the Democrats, if you could consult the Democrats reached out to you and Zev and said, all right, prep us. What would you ask Pam Bondi with what you know right now?
I would ask her where the other 37 pages are. I want to know. I want to know why those, because that's the bulk of the interviews or the slideshow or whatever it is. Where are those other 37 pages?
I'd ask, what did the president know and when did he know it in terms of ordering a cover-up? Like, at some point, someone told Pam Bondi, marshal all your troops, get everybody in 1,000 people into different rooms and start scrubbing any references to Donald Trump from the Epstein files and do it stat. Did the president know about this? Did the president order this? Did Pam Bondi know about it? Did she order it? I mean, where did it start and where did the cover-up happen? Because that is the story now. I think that is the biggest part of this. What exposes this president the most is this cover up, is the fact that he and his administration went in so deep to cover up so many details of his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein that he is complicit now in a crime, maybe guilty of a crime.
And furthermore, folks, to Zev's point, because we like to bring receipts. Last year, the Wall Street Journal, over the summer, the Wall Street Journal reported that Pam Bondi told Donald Trump that he was all up in the Epstein files. Donald Trump then, when asked about it, lied publicly. I believe it was ABC News that asked him. We also know that the DOJ had FBI agents working in 24-hour to 48-hour shifts, which is remarkable. 24-hour to 48-hour shifts where they couldn't leave, where they had one job. Oh, not investigating the rape of girls, but to see how many times Donald Trump appeared in the Epstein files and to scrub his name. They were all working off the same Epstein file. This was, see, Epstein run through my headphones, Excel sheet. And that means they could have actually downloaded some of this information. So I guarantee you'll see leaks.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, we also then found out that Donald Trump allegedly wrote a lewd message to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday book. Wall Street Journal stood behind its reporting. Donald Trump that day tried to pressure and threaten Wall Street Journal. Then a couple of weeks later, voila, Zev and Ellie, what do we find out? The actual book itself. I wonder who gave them that book. Maybe it was Glenn. Right after that happened, folks, Todd Blanche, who's Donald Trump's personal attorney, flies all the way from D.C. to Florida. He's never supposed to leave D.C. as a deputy attorney general, and talks to Glenn Maxwell. The person who should have talked to Glenn Maxwell was the prosecutor on the case, Maureen Comey. But what happened to Maureen Comey the week before? She was fired. So Todd Blanche comes to the rescue, and less than a week later, Glenn Maxwell, to this day, we have no idea who ordered or told, well, it was probably Todd Blanche, but why? Who told Todd Blanche to tell the Bureau of Prisons to change her offender status and give her a once-in-a-lifetime transfer to minimum security Club Fed, where she's at right now? And she has openly, through her attorneys, said, oh, yeah, I'm willing to say Donald Trump did nothing wrong if you give me a commutation. So I'm just laying out some of the facts that, to me, Zev, back up what you have said, that is a cover-up. And then speaking about cover-up, there's, when we found, well, let's tie this out to what we're talking about, Ellie. A day after the FBI logged in this woman's interview to the FBI database, a day after Jeffrey Epstein was found dead. Just interesting point. 3 days after her second interview, he was found dead. Can you tell everyone who has been terrified about World War III the latest news about Jeffrey Epstein's suicide that we found out this week?
Okay, so I mean, we're going back and talking about this woman named Tova Noel. And then there was another guard, and they were both convicted because they had said they'd been checking on Jeffrey Epstein, and they were not actually checking on him. They were just marking in their book that they had checked on him. They were his name is Michael, and I wish I remembered his name. But the other guard was the first person to find Epstein supposedly at 6:33 in the morning. But now we have these 302s, and they've been out for a couple of months, because I remember reading them before. But their testimony from an inmate saying that he overheard the guards talking about a cover up, that Tova had killed Epstein, and kind of these things that they heard, shuffling down the hall, which obviously puts something that's already into question, under greater question of, is there some kind of, was there extortion happening? Because now we have Tova's putting thousands of dollars into her bank account right before he died. Did we have an accident where there was a mistreatment of a person who might have survived and they mishandled him and broke his neck? I don't know. But something shady was heard by another inmate, where we also have to, take with a grain of salt if that inmate was trying to get something in return for the information he was given. But that is definitely something that's in question, because you can look at all the details surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein and say that, well, this sounds legit. Sometimes the end of the hyoid bone breaks if you're old and you're brittle and da-da-da-da. But when you put all the things together, all the details together, you start to say, like, this doesn't fit. Like this, there's something more going on here that isn't, we don't have all the information about how he died, why he died, the fact that he had very strange cellmates up until the time he died, and then the cellmates died. Like there's just a lot of weird stuff.
There isn't a photograph of him dead, in his cell. That photograph does not exist.
No.
Which is strange. You would think for a major figure like that, for them not to take a photograph of the death scene. I mean, you see it in every movie, you see it in every TV show going. That's what they do, right? They photograph the thing. It doesn't exist. There's a lot of really questionable scenarios about how he could possibly have hung himself. I don't know if you've seen the footage inside. I put it on Narrative a few weeks ago. It's not a cell you could easily commit suicide in. It's designed to be suicide proof. And so he's got all these bedding and that, it's too much bedding. You don't get that kind of bedding. You don't get tons and tons of bedding in isolation. You only get what you need. And then it's strewn all over the place. And supposedly he strangles himself with one of these things that's a noose. And I mean, then there's no body. It's just, where was why was it so important to get him to the hospital? Sure, maybe they're trying to save his life. Maybe that was the reason. Yeah. But I just find the whole thing, shoddy. It's questionable, the whole thing.
Some of the details are a prison guard for Epstein, Tova Noel, Googled him just minutes before, as Ellie was saying, he was found deceased. And she made a mysterious $5,000 cash deposit 10 days before Epstein's death that was even flagged by her bank. She was previously accused of falsifying records, but the charges were dropped. According to the New York Post, of all places, but still, Noel made multiple Google searches less than an hour before Epstein was found deceased. She Googled latest on Epstein jail at 5:42 a.m. and then again at 5:52 a.m., less than 40 minutes before her colleague, correctional officer Michael Thomas, that was the name, Ellie, found Epstein dead, hanging at 6:30 a.m. Chase Bank had flashed cash deposits in Noel's bank account in a suspicious activity report to the FBI in November 2019. One deposit was $5,000 on July 30th. Epstein was found deceased on August 20th. Also, to make it a bit worse, an inmate says he overheard guards discussing a cover-up, saying, "You killed them, you killed them." Some of the guards were saying, "Breathe." This is what Julie Brown said in February last month. Why did the Manhattan medical examiner sign a confidentiality agreement, quote, in connection with the investigation to the murder of Jeffrey Epstein? And why are names redacted in this document? Aaron Parnas, Lev's son, has this document on the Justice Files where in 2020, 1 year after Epstein died, an assistant United States attorney for the Eastern District of New York discusses a confidentiality agreement, quote, in connection with the investigation into the murder of Jeffrey Epstein. Before we get into more, there's a lot there, Zev.
How did she have time, Waj, to do all these searches, but then didn't have time to do the regular 30-minute checks on the prisoner that she was meant to do because she had fallen asleep? I mean, one of these things doesn't add up. Either the guards fell asleep or they were so distracted doing searches, but their job is to do regular check-ins on the prisoner, and they didn't do that for, I think a whole night. And then she gets this mysterious $5,000 check or whatever it is, payment that she gets. No one knows where she's from. She's a prison guard. It's not common for her to get these $5,000 infusions of cash. And obviously the whole thing stinks. I mean, the circumstantial evidence is hard to see how he committed suicide there. It's hard to see, any way that he committed suicide. So the other options, either he escaped or he's being killed. Those are the two options that lead you to, the scenario post-suicide. And if it's not suicide, it's one of those two things, most likely murder, you'd think. But we just don't know because the guards were sleeping or searching or whatever it is they were doing.
And Ellie.
Yeah. So there's a lot of weird stuff. Here's some weird stuff. So we talk about Efrain Reyes, who was his last roommate up until either the 8th or the 9th of August. He was right until the end, has since died. He talked about there being extortion. There's something in the article that talks about him saying, you'll be better off if you pay people off. And then you also see that 2 days before Epstein died, he updated his will, like on August 8th. So I feel that one way or another, he knew he was going to die. How that
Yeah.
turned out remains to be seen. But the roommate
Or
said
escape. You know, I mean, there is that
yeah,
option. That is
is true.
possible.
That is true.
It is
That
possible
is
that
true.
this was a giant escape hatch, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Don't
Yeah,
give
yeah.
me another conspiracy, Zev.
It's
Don't gi-
it's not a conspiracy theory, but it's equally a possibility. You know, we just don't know. We just you know, so this stuck with me all along, and I'm not sure if it's still accurate. I have to check with Mark Epstein himself, but Mark never got the actual certificate from the city saying Jeffrey Epstein died, which you can normally get. You know, you're a kin of
Right.
someone who died. You go and get that. Mark never got that. The official announcement came from the DOJ.
Yeah.
but didn't Mark do another autopsy, and the doctor concluded that there were 3 bone breaks in the neck, and the 3 bone
Inconsistent with
breaks.
suicide.
Yeah, the
As
3
well.
bone breaks, Ellie, in the neck are not like, if you were to hang yourself, like, just say what they said, right? You hang yourself in your prison cell. This
Mhm.
is not what this does not happen to your neck.
Right.
Also, just like a very tiny detail is they intubated him, right, in an attempt to resuscitate him. And you don't intubate anybody if they've gone into rigor mortis. You can't do it. And
Mm.
you go into rigor mortis in a relatively short period of time, within a couple hours. So he would have had to have died pretty quick before they found him. So that's just kind of like a small detail, but it matters because then you're in rigor mortis for a very, very long time before you come back out of it. So that's when you're all stiffened up and you can't, think of the person being
I
hard.
mean,
Sorry.
when did they declare him dead? Once he got to the hospital, or was it?
Yeah, 7:30. So it was an hour later.
And then
So
also, according to the latest news that we got from this later story, that another guard came in and said, "Breathe." The inmates alleged
yeah,
from the 302 that what they heard was this commotion. Other guards in there, they said, "Dudes, you killed them, dudes." And then
yeah,
they apparently looked at a body and said, "Breathe, breathe, breathe." That's what the inmates said, according to the 302s.
right.
That they overheard this commotion and the inmates, and they saw it as a cover up. According to another autopsy that was allegedly done, there's 3 bone breaks in the neck. Is
Mhm.
not consistent with a death by suicide. And then also, what we know is, remember, CBS did this when CBS was not completely corrupt and destroyed. Scott MacFarlane, I'm reading his tweet. He just announced that he's leaving CBS News.
Ah,
A
such a great
review,
guy. I love
yeah,
Scott.
a review by multiple experts found several indications that may not be raw footage. And specifically, he's talking about the Justice Department releasing that footage. And then Julie Brown said, as I said for weeks, the prison camera view released by the DOJ did not show Epstein's cell
No,
or even the stairway to his wing.
no. It was
Yeah.
across the whole unit. Like, people
Yeah.
think they're looking at his room. It's not. It's like down the stairs, across the unit, up the stairs,
It
behind
literally
another
misses
door,
the
and
unit.
down a
From
hallway.
the
Like,
graphic, it misses the unit completely.
yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't. It's
And the
nowhere
entrance
on the
to it.
camera.
You know, that's the problem with it, is you just don't see how you can get there from
Right.
from the video that we got. That video is very suspect. The fact that only 1 or 2 cameras were working that night, it's not,
Mhm.
I mean, maybe it's possible, but
Well, here's
you know,
another.
it's just dodgy questioning. It's worth questioning, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, to throw another conspiracy in there. The picture of him dead, laying on the stretcher. Um, his color is really good. And now, like, you don't know the quality of how they took the picture and if they whatever, but his color is good in it. His color is not the color of someone who's been dead for any significant amount of time. He's not. You don't see his blood pooling. When people die, they see blood pooling in the bottoms of their body and their arms. You see, like, dark bruising. He doesn't have any of that.
It's so interesting.
So if he had died, it would have been immediately before that picture had been taken.
And that's the only picture we have. The only single
Yeah.
picture we have is him being wheeled on a gurney into supposedly an ER, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing we have. Now, here's the conspiracy theory around all of this, is there are apparently suggestions that there were 2 vehicles that sped away from the MCC that morning. And, potentially 2 bodies, or one was a decoy vehicle, the other one was not. I'm not saying that's anywhere being proven or factual or anything, but that is a scenario that's painted out there, and I think it's verified in some of these claims in the DOJ files. But
this is
it's
the
a lot.
problem, right, Zev? That I'm telling. Well, we'll do speculation right now. The fact that when you don't have transparency, and when more and more evidence comes out that shows that Epstein seeded so much evil in the world, billions of dollars to these, Harvard, and millions of dollars to Harvard and MIT. Zorro Ranch, which is now being investigated for potential, not just rape and trafficking, but also dead bodies, right? You see Prince Andrew now being investigated. Then you see Mandelson being investigated. The prime minister, the foreign minister, excuse me, right? You see the fact that his fingerprints were everywhere, Zev. And then you see that, Israel put in a security camera in the New York townhouse. And then you see that Ehud Barak was there. And then you see Bill Gates was said, okay, my bad, right? There's so much there that it feeds more conspiracy theories. And when you don't give people enough information, the reason why conspiracy theories thrive is they make sense out of an illogical world. They give you a nice narrative, right? And so now, in order to, it's the Streisand effect. They've just made everything even worse for themselves by covering this up instead of just literally being like honest about it. And I'll tell you all, I'm sure you've seen this in your circles. I was in Phoenix recently, just over the weekend. And then I'm here in the Bay Area, and then I went up to Buffalo, and I call this affectionately the WhatsApp middle-aged auntie WhatsApp groups. Middle-aged aunties WhatsApp groups, regardless of ethnicity.
Powerful group. Powerful group.
They will destroy you. They can make you or crush you.
Yeah,
Ellie,
absolutely.
in 10 years, will be in this group. Just wait for it. But I'm talking about educated, intelligent folks, Ellie and Zev. Like, I've lost them. Like, I literally say, you know what, folks? There's no facts right now that Epstein was eating babies. And they're like, shut up, you're a liar. He was eating babies. And then I was like, there's no fact right now that, like, that's Ghislaine Maxwell's decoy. You're an idiot, Waj. That's a model.
We know it. We saw it.
Yeah, and Ghislaine is with Epstein in Israel. But Ellie, talk to us about the conspiracy of it all and how it's so difficult to sift through fact and fiction when the people are like, we've lost the aunties, man.
Yeah, well, again, you can look at, I got a deep dive on just his first, suicide attempt and how messed up that the results of that were that led into the second, right? And I kind of wonder if that there wasn't some intent behind it, because the first attempt he had this guy named Nicholas Tartaglione, who was his former roommate from like right when he got in there, which according to Lev, he shouldn't have had a roommate because he was high profile, but they gave him a roommate who was a former NYPD cop and had killed like 3 people, very violent offender. That's his roommate. And then there was like this mix of like, it was an accident. He tried to kill himself. No big deal. And then the story starts to change of like, no, he was being extorted. Epstein himself changes his story. But you look at all the reports that came out from people after that, the people who were in the room right after it happened, and everybody had a different report. Some people said he was sitting up talking, he was refusing to answer questions, he was walking. Other people said he's getting chest compressions. Like, it varied so much. And then we had this swath of pictures that looked like he was dead, right? All those pictures of him laying on his back, looking very dead. And then we have this whole scenario happens again a month later. That was very sketchy to me, because then they pull out Nicholas Tartaglione. They bring in this guy, Ethan Reyes, who then died right after he got out of jail. But they were also going to give him, there's an email and I just pulled it up, but there's a guy named Cesar Sayak. I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah, Cesar Sayak. Yeah.
Yeah, they were going to have him be Epstein's roommate. He's the guy who was sending incendiary. Yes, he was sending incendiary devices to all the politicians. He sent 13 explosive devices, pipe bombs. That was going to be his roommate.
Cesar Sayak, folks, exactly for that. Yeah. I remember this is the first Trump administration. He was a guy who got radicalized, and on the side of like his van, he had all the targets that Donald Trump.
All right, remember that. Oh, yeah. I remember that story. Crazy story.
He's the one who sent it to CNN also. And then his attorney later said it's Fox News and the right wing that radicalized him. Wow.
He was tied to organize the mob. Wasn't he tied to the mob, that guy?
Yep. Well, that was going to be his roommate. I don't know if he ever was, but that I haven't.
The roommates thing. The roommates are there because these guys are meant to be, to stop suicide.
Now, Ellie, thank you. Wow.
Yeah, page 32.
Wow, that's really interesting. But they're meant to stop them from committing suicide, right? They're not meant to, that's their role. They're not there to murder the other person or attempt to kill the other person. But it's interesting that he was on suicide watch up until that night that he died. Then they take him off suicide watch, which means he's now in solitary confinement, doesn't have a roommate, which means, the door is open and he can basically, anyone can do whatever they want to him, or he can commit suicide theoretically, although it's impossible in that cell. These things just don't add up. And who changes their will 2 days before being murdered?
Right.
I mean, you don't expect to be murdered. You
Right.
expect to, you might expect to escape, or you might expect to commit suicide, but not the murder part. That's not likely.
Can I ask you another question? Can you? I'm looking at this right now about Caesar Sayoc. Well, real quick, folks, Caesar Sayoc, I just have this stuck in my head. He was one of the first high profile people that so many of us said, listen, folks, MAGA is a right wing group that is being radicalized by Donald Trump to commit violence. They said, shut up, Waj, you're crazy. You have TDS. Like, look at right wing media. He's going to incite violence. Like, you're an idiot, Waj. Caesar Sayoc was one of the first guys who literally tried to kill Trump's critics and enemies, which includes Don Lemon and other folks at CNN. Interesting that if you want to keep Jeffrey Epstein from killing himself, why would you choose, of all people, Cesar Sayoc, who tried to kill people for Donald Trump as his inmate, Zevin Ellie?
Very suspect. Very, it's interesting. The people that Mark Epstein calls the FBI at some point, and he says, I think Donald Trump killed Jeffrey Epstein, my brother.
Yeah.
And that's another report inside this DOJ files. So Mark Epstein, who's pretty close to the story, he knows a lot about what was going on. His suspicion is that Donald Trump killed Jeffrey Epstein. So if he suspects that, and I'll tell you, Stephen Hoffenberg also suspected that Donald Trump killed Jeffrey Epstein, and now you've got Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate is Donald Trump's sometimes assassin. That's a little bit, or it's a little stretch, but you know what I mean. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, and again, back to what Lev had said. He said no high profile person in a jail. This is not prison. This is jail. Should have a cellmate whatsoever. They shouldn't have a cellmate, and they shouldn't have more than like one sheet. And he had like a stack of sheets.
Yeah.
and every like high profile cellmate possible.
Yeah, it's really there's a lot of questions.
And also, let's give you some stools. You want some stools? Here's a fan also. I also remember, folks, another data point. A few months ago, if you recall, we talked about this in the Left Hook. CBS also revealed, and this was right after Barry Weiss came out, and I think they wanted to do some real good journalism before they all went to hell, that we found out the photos. We got a series of photos from the Epstein jail cell, right? The murder-suicide cell. And the audit showed that every single mistake that could have been made was made. Evidence was mishandled. There were footprints everywhere. It was sloppy. The guards were not interviewed for 2 years, Zevin Ellie. So here I am thinking to myself, everything that we're telling you the facts versus, we're not versus, but we're telling you everything. Here's the facts. Here's what we know. Here's speculation. Here's conspiracy theories. But that again came out just a couple of months ago. And all the photos have come out that you can see where it's just like a sloppy job done by first-year forensic auditors. Like every mistake that was made, could have been made, was made. So high-profile case, Jeffrey Epstein. It's a major arrest, suicide threat, apparently. He has the goods. Ellie and Zev, why in this high profile case with a person that could potentially point and finger all these influential people like Andrew, like Mandelson, like his best friend, Donald Trump? Can you please explain why every single mistake that could have happened when it came to the forensic audit of the murder-suicide scene, Zev?
No, I can't explain it. I mean, it's impossible to explain all this stuff. Look, something happened that was not suicide there. Likely murder. I mean, that seems to be the most obvious thing. That morning, it was about 30 minutes after we got the news. At 7:30 in the morning, I called Stephen Hoffenberg, who was in hospital in New Hampshire or somewhere like that. He's going through just a procedure. And I told him that Jeffrey Epstein had died. And he freaked out. Like, he was like, he wanted every any needles or anything connected to him taken out of him right away. He called the doctor in. I said, nobody touches me today. I don't want to go through any procedure. I don't want anything happening to me today. And I said to him, what? And he wouldn't let me get off the line. He said, stay on the line with me. I want you to hear all of this. And so I'm like, Steve, why do you think someone's going to try? Why do you think? Why are you so worried about this? He says, well, they killed Jeffrey. They're going to kill me. I was like, well, what does that mean? And then I said, who is going to kill you? And he said, Donald Trump is going to kill him.
Mm.
Now that's just, that's he for all the things that people say about Hoffenberg, he was pretty plugged in, I still think, to Epstein in that world at the final stages of his life. So there's a lot of, and for all the things that people say about Stephen Epstein, in the last few days of his life, he was giving names and he was starting to talk to the prosecutors about what was really going on. So there's motive, and then there's just reality of who stood the most to benefit from from Jeffrey Epstein's demise. And if we go back to the start of the show, well, look who's being most covered up by the DOJ in the Epstein files. So who has the most to benefit in both cases? It's only one guy.
And the person and that's the same guy who's mentioned the most in the Epstein files, and that's his closest friend for 10 years, Donald Trump. Ellie, why would Bill Barr visit Epstein before he magically kills himself?
Well, Epstein was apparently sending things to Bill Barr in those last few years. I mean, and his connection with the Barr family goes way back. It was likely Epstein or Barr's father who gave him the job at the Dalton School. So like they have very, very deep threads between Epstein and the Barr family. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like you look at this guy who's in potentially going to prison, but he was indicted for the same things. He had 2 indictments against him. He had 2 indictments against him in Palm Beach. He never thought he was going to go to prison for the rest of his life. He thought the same thing was going to happen. He was going to get a slap on the wrist and he was going to get out. So the idea that he just was like, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm throwing in the towel is a little wild because he'd been through this before. Now, he probably hated it the first time, even though it was a very light sentence. But not enough to kill himself. But also, something that we do not have that we desperately need in this case is the transcript of the call with Karina Shuliak, which is his girlfriend of the last 8 years. She was the last person to talk to him the night before. And they talked for 20 to 30 minutes. They talked for a long time. And that phone call will give us a lot of information about where his head was. I mean, even if we don't know what ultimately he did or didn't do, we'll know where his head was in those last moments before he died.
I
This
love
is the daughter of a Belarusian oligarch, basically, or mini oligarch. This is not just a Belarusian girlfriend. This is a woman whose father is very wealthy inside Belarus, the Belarus community. So, so it's not possibly intelligence ties. Everything is tied to intelligence in there. So it's just those are two of the. Can I get back to Barr for one thing? Sorry, I know what you were going to ask a question.
Go for it.
So there's a couple of interesting things. Barr was working for the CIA at the time that Jeffrey Epstein was working for Dalton, for Donald
Barr's
Barr.
father, folks.
Yeah.
Bill Barr's father.
So and what was he doing? He was on the Columbia campus trying to stop radicals or something happening, which would have placed him in New York at the time that Jeffrey Epstein was teaching at the school. Now, maybe Dad didn't introduce him to Jeffrey Epstein, but they both landed up having ties to the CIA. They both landed up having ties to Israel. And those two things, it's hard to escape. I saw in my investigation, and I wish I'd kept it. It's, it bugs me the hell that I didn't. I saw a sign-in sheet that included a Donald Barr reference. Now it wasn't official, it was an official document, but I saw it in my investigations. I've never found it again, and I've tried very hard to find it. Why did Bill Barr go to visit Epstein? It's ridiculous. Why would the Attorney General go and visit a prisoner in 2 days before he dies? No, that should never happen. The Attorney General is meant to be the Attorney General. You're not meant to do these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So he obviously had a relationship with Epstein. It makes the whole thing even more suspect.
And Bill Barr's still alive, folks. So is Alex Acosta. I mean, these people can answer questions. Alex Acosta, why'd you give a sweetheart deal? Bill Barr, what did you discuss? Bill Barr, why did your dad give Jeffrey Epstein, who was completely unqualified, a teaching position at one of the most privileged universities, where then he was connected to, middle class Jews like him who made it, and then that allowed him to ascend in his wealth. Right. Some questions. Why, oh, why was this video camera pointed literally in the direction away from Jeffrey Epstein's cell? Why, oh, why was every single mistake that could have been made during the forensics made? Why, oh, why did you hide these 3 interview summaries of this credible witness? It's a cover up. And folks, I was like, did he kill himself? Did he not kill himself? I don't think he killed himself. But with everything that just came out, I'm very confidently going to say this man did not kill himself. I'm with Julie Brown. I'm with the middle-aged aunties, Ellie and Zev.
Me too.
And his brother also, Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, says his brother wasn't suicidal. There's too much there. None of this makes, especially for such a high profile inmate who was under 24/7 watch. You know what I'm saying, Zev and Ellie? Even that's the giveaway. Like, if you're a high profile potential suicide watch inmate and you apparently have eyes on you all the time, this is literally me observing that you put the eyes away from him. And then you have the inmates in the 302 saying, you hear literally them saying, accusing each other of killing him. They killed him. And so I think they killed him. And when I say they, I think it's Donald Trump. Ellie, what's your take on this?
I mean, again, it could be, we have a vast range. It could be that it was a murder for hire, a hit that saved what Trump thought was a lot of information from becoming exposed. Because again, that is the thing that Epstein is willing to talk about. That is probably why we don't have his interviews with Michael Wolff. That is the thing that he would run his mouth on, was the history of Epstein, or the history of Donald Trump and his finances and what happened with Maison de l'Amitié and all the untoward things that Trump was doing. But I mean, if you play devil's advocate and go the other way, it could be a mishandling of a suicide attempt gone wrong, where they actually ended up killing him, pulling him down. I don't know. But I mean,
Can I show you something? I've got to run, but can I show you something? Can I share something on your screen here?
Yeah.
It's the actual video from the jail cell. So I'm going to try, if it lets me. It's done this before. Let me see if it lets me do this.
Oh, Substack.
Let me find it. Here it is. Okay. So you're not going to get audio here, but you're going to hear my audio. But this is the going into the jail cell. I can speed it up for you, but it's kind of interesting. It's worth watching a little bit if you've got time. And I'm going to jump off for 5 stack, but look at this place. This is the official police video of the jail cell where Jeffrey Epstein was found. And this is not on camera. This is the stuff that should have been surveilled, but is not surveilled. They're just describing on camera here that this is Epstein's cell, and then they take you inside. And this is very telling. The guy saying it's a view from outside. I don't know if you can hear the audio, so I'm just going to...
No. That's
and so this is it. This is where he dies. That bunk bed is what, 4 feet high? I don't know.
Yeah.
How are you hanging yourself off that thing?
Interesting.
I mean, there's those grates on that window. That's a possibility, I guess. But this is not a suicide-friendly environment for anybody to commit suicide in.
But also, didn't they say how did they say they found him? Like, what position was he in when they found him?
Well, he was dead on the floor, but the noose wasn't even around him, which is also bizarre.
And
how does that happen?
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. So anyway,
so Waj has become a desi middle-aged auntie.
You did contact me on WhatsApp, so there you go.
Yeah. After look, I trust the evidence. I always try to trust the evidence, folks, which is why I always try to take my time with the Epstein stuff, because there's also victims at play, right? And a lot of people treat this as entertainment. After everything we've seen, Ellie and Zev, this guy did not just suicide himself. There's just what we've known now, the extent, Zev, the depth of his connections and ties to the world's most powerful people. If I knew what I knew when I was Epstein, I would be looking over my shoulders. And I still don't understand why that guard got thousands of dollars. I don't know why that guard did those mysterious searches. The fact that there's the 302s where other inmates are talking about the cover up. The fact that the camera's angle doesn't have the cell. The fact that every mistake that could have been made happened when it came to the forensic audit of the murder suicide place. The fact that Glenn Maxwell is right now sitting in a minimum security camp and no one explains to me why. The fact that he got a sweetheart deal and was allowed to keep raping girls. I mean, all this, Zev and Ellie, to me, it seems that we're witnessing the biggest cover up in modern history.
I have
Zev,
to run.
I know
So
you have to run, so I
let me
wanted to
just
give you the final
yeah.
word before, and then Ellie, just stay 2 minutes if you can.
Yeah.
So the thing that I'll just add this because it just came to me as you was describing this incredible set of circumstances. Who is in charge of the Department of the Bureau of Prisons at this time? Who's the head guy of the Bureau of Prisons?
Tell me.
Bill Barr, as the head of the DOJ, is in charge of the Bureau of Prisons.
Yeah.
So if you're going to arrange anything inside there that you wanted to, be seem impossible but actually could happen, there's ways of doing it if you're the head of the organization running the bureau.
Zev, you have to jump off. Shamelessly promote yourself.
I'm at narrative.org, NARATIV.org. Lots of Epstein stuff, lots of Donald Trump corruption stuff, and the 5 Stack at 3:00, which I shouldn't be saying because I know you're going to be doing stuff too. But hey, we're plenty friends.
I'm talking about Iran. So with Freedom.
Oh, so are we. So
take care, Zev. Thank you. Go back and forth, guys. Have both streams.
You're awesome. Thanks so much, guys. I love you both.
Take care. Ellie, final word to you about what you want to see next.
About what I want to see? Okay, I want that phone call from Karina Shuliak. Speaking as a transcriber, I want the interviews consistently from Michael Wolff. I want all those. I now lean into, now that we see the relationship he had with Epstein and the double agentry that he was doing, that there is more than enough evidence to show that he could equally have been doing the same thing with Donald Trump, getting information and then sharing information back. And so now I think about, why don't we have those interviews, those 100 hours of interviews? Well, they could talk a lot about Donald Trump. That could be a thing, and that could be why we're not seeing them. So I want everything. I want any kind of interview that shows, tells, talks about, and I want to get them all out.
Can I, and real quick before we head out, for those who haven't followed, what's the cliff notes on the Michael Wolff at all as you've been going through the documents?
Okay, so
we'll
Michael
do another
Wolff,
separate on this extended one.
So Michael Wolff is, a storied journalist and author, and he's someone who approached this story as someone who had pretty much more information than anyone. Said he was the last person to talk to Epstein's people. He was not. And he came to Substack as kind of a hero status of, he was the guy who could help solve the story. He's been doing a lot of Daily Beast interviews, like multiple a day. Then we got the Epstein files, and it turns out he was a very close friend of Epstein. And he's had lots of information this whole time that he's not been willing to share, including 100 hours of interviews that he did with Epstein, and makes the claim that the reason he has not released those interviews is because nobody wants them, which,
You said that to me several times.
Yeah, which is, I don't know who doesn't want them at this point, but now we have to.
I've tried.
Yes, right. Just put them in a Google Drive, drop them. They don't need, it's so easy.
I literally offered it to him, folks. I think it was in the first or second interview I did with him. I said, I'll find people, we'll do it for free.
Yeah.
He's like, well, okay.
I will transcribe 100 hours for free. Right. I'll do it. I'll help. But now that we see that he was, on behalf of his own kind of glory, working with Epstein rather than working with the journalists, rather than working with law enforcement, the stuff that he knew that he kept secret, the people he helped. Now we have to talk about that he may have been doing the same thing because he had the most access to Donald Trump of anyone. He never got sued by Melania, yet he made $800,000 from the American public to pay his legal bills. There was just a lot of very strange and very untoward stuff that happened with Michael Wolff, and it's disappointing to me because I followed him for a long time. I was a paid subscriber. I bought his books. I really looked up to him as a journalist, and now we see all these emails, and I realized that it wasn't the story I thought it was.
I interviewed him twice. And I knew his reputation, but
Mhm.
I said, okay, if he can provide information on Epstein, this will be helpful. I asked him both times I interviewed him, why not just release the audio, the
Mhm.
hundreds of hours of just extremely important conversation that
Right.
he had with Epstein. I never got a satisfactory answer, and
Right.
now what Ellie's been sharing with me, he's a snake. This
Mhm.
is disgusting, and I think he has.
Well, and I think they probably condemn him as well. I think now that he's seeing these emails, he realizes there's probably things in those interviews that don't make him look very good. But you have to think when you have a person who's a convicted criminal of one of the biggest crime rings in history, 100 hours won't have nothing on it. They will have something somewhere on those interviews that is helpful in this case, and anything that is helpful to find justice for these women should be an easy answer to just give it.
Um, Folks, a lot more questions need to be answered. Ellie, please shamelessly promote yourself.
All right, I am on Substack at the Panicked Writer. I'm everywhere else at Red Pencil Script. You can find me now on YouTube. I got my YouTube up and running. I'm also the Panicked Writer there. And I'm just, chugging along writing these articles and talking to you and getting this
And
information out.
I'm sharing Ellie's Substack link. Like me, she has a special. Use the special, get some money off. Everything is free, but
Thanks.
she's independent. So if you can, please be a paid subscriber for her. It's like $3.75 a month. If you have a few dollars left over, become a paid subscriber to me. And also, this will be up on our YouTube channels. Ellie and I are trying to learn the YouTubes. So
Yeah, right.
once I put this on my YouTube, I will invite her to collaborate so that she could put it on her YouTube or vice versa. And then, so this will be on our YouTube channels and also on our Substack. Everything is free. There's no paywalls. Thank you all for watching. I'll be back
Thank
in 1
you.
minute with Trita Parsi. He's a really fantastic resource on Iran. I think one of the best.
All
If you
right.
want to know exactly what's happening with a clear-eyed analysis, literally join me in 1 minute and I'll be talking to Iranian American expert Trita Parsi. Thank you, Ellie.
Thanks, Waj. Talk to you later.